Alex Eala, Birmingham, the curse. And what comes next? She was sitting in a chair that wasn't hers yet. That's the detail nobody talks about when you watch a player warming up before a final. The chair on the opposite side of the net. The trophy table sitting just barely in frame at the edge of the court. The way the crowd watches you like they've already read the ending and they're just waiting for you to catch up. Alex Eala sat in that chair. Bounced the grip of her racket against her palm. Once. Twice. And looked across the net. At a Czech player. And if you've followed Alex Eala's last 2 years on tour, if you know anything about what that means, you just felt something drop in your stomach. Because Czech players and Alex Eala have a history. Not the good kind. Not the kind you frame on a wall. 0 wins. 13 losses. A number so specific, so relentless, so mathematically brutal that it stopped being a coincidence somewhere around loss number 7. 13 times she walked onto a court against a Czech opponent. 13 times she walked off the loser. Not 12. Not 14. 13, a number that had quietly become its own conversation in tennis circles. Its own shadow following her from city to city, surface to surface. And now here she was. Final of the Birmingham Open. A title on the line. A Wimbledon seeding hovering somewhere in the near distance like a prize just out of arm's reach. Hundreds of Filipino fans packed into a grass court club in the middle of England, holding their collective breath, flags in their hands, hearts in their throats. And the draw handed her Bartonova. A Czech player. The universe, apparently, has a very specific sense of humor. But here is what I need you to understand before we go any further, and I mean this completely. This story is not about a tennis match. It is not even really about Birmingham. It is about what happens when a player arrives at the exact moment that was engineered to break her. When every number, every precedent, every psychological pattern is lined up against her. And she decides, in real time, in front of thousands of people, under lights, under pressure, under the full weight of a curse that had followed her for 2 full years, that she is not going to break. What happened at Edgbaston Priory Club on that Saturday afternoon in June 2026 was the kind of thing that gets referenced in highlight reels a decade from now. The kind of thing people say they watched live as though it's a credential. And most people still don't fully understand what was actually at stake. Stay with me. By the time we reach the end of this, you will. The match that told us everything. Before the final even started, let's go back further. Not to the final. To the beginning of the week. Because champions are not built in finals. They are revealed there. And the match that should have been a blinking alarm for every opponent left in the draw happened in the second round against a Russian qualifier named Kavina. On paper, it should have been routine. A top seed against a qualifier. The kind of match that gets filed away and forgotten before the day is out. It wasn't. Kavina came out swinging, not tentatively, not just trying to compete, but genuinely swinging, and she built a 5-2 lead in the second set. 5 games to 2. On grass. Against the top seed. And the crowd began doing that thing crowds do when they sense an upset forming. That quiet, electric shift. The leaning forward. The collective inhale. The energy that says, something dangerous is happening here. What happened next is the part that matters more than the final scoreline. Eala won 5 consecutive games. Not 4. 5. She erased a 5-2 deficit and closed out the match without surrendering another game to Kavina. Didn't just survive. Dismantled. She turned a situation that looked like a slow-motion collapse into a lesson. And not through luck, not through Kavina losing her nerve, but through something more intentional than either of those things. That is not momentum. Momentum is passive. Momentum is something that happens to you. What Eala did was deliberate. That is a player who has learned, somewhere deep in the competitive wiring of her brain, through hours and losses and matches that hurt, how to flip a switch that most players don't even know they have. How to locate something beneath the panic and use it. How to look at a scoreboard that says you're losing and decide, with full clarity, that it simply doesn't apply to her anymore. If you had watched that moment closely, if you had paid attention to the way she moved between games, the way she reset between points, The way her body language refused to carry the weight of the score. You would have walked out of that second-round match already knowing what Birmingham was about to see. But most people didn't connect the dots. Most people were still staring at the number 13. Still watching it follow her like a shadow into the final. The first set, control, then the rising water. Here is the honest version of how the first set unfolded. She was in control. Real control. The kind you can actually see if you know what to look for. A player reading the match 2 shots ahead, every pattern having a purpose, every serve landing exactly where she intended. She wasn't just competing. She was operating. And then Bartonova did what great competitors do at the worst possible moment. She found something. A gear that hadn't been there in the opening games. A level that emerged quietly at first, then louder, then undeniable. She started taking the set back. Game by game. The way water rises. Slowly, and then suddenly. 7-5. First set to Bartonova. The crowd went quiet in the way that isn't really quiet at all. It was that specific kind of stadium silence where everyone is thinking the same thing and nobody wants to say it out loud. 13. The number sat in the air above that court. Unspoken. Everywhere. The moment between sets, where careers are actually decided, and here is where I need to slow completely down. Because this moment, not the match point, not the trophy, not the final score, this moment is the one that separates careers. The walk to the baseline after losing the first set. A player who has lost 13 consecutive matches against a particular type of opponent. In a final. On a surface where every point costs something irreplaceable. After giving up the opening set. That player has every psychological justification in the world to start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. To hedge. To protect. To let the weight of the history become the story she tells herself about what's about to happen. To let the curse become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Alex Eala walked to the baseline and came out swinging. Second set. 6-3. It wasn't a grind. It wasn't a battle. It was clean, aggressive, decisive, played with a kind of precision that belongs to someone who has already made a decision about how this match ends and is simply in the process of proving it to everyone else in the stadium. 1 set all. The third set, weight, pressure, and what it actually means now. Finally, we arrive at the third set. And I need you to feel the actual weight of a third set in a grass court final before I tell you what happened in it. Every point in a third set costs something that doesn't come back. Your legs. Your lungs. The reserves of focus you've been drawing from all afternoon. By the time players reach a third set in a final, they are not simply playing tennis anymore. They are managing the accumulated pressure of 2+ hours of competition, a crowd that keeps shifting allegiances, the awareness, sharp and constant, that a single mistake at the wrong moment can unravel everything. Eala built a 5-3 lead. 2 games from the title. The Philippine flags in the crowd, and there were so many of them, far more than anyone had anticipated inside this intimate English tennis club, started rising. The chanting began. And then Bartonova broke back. 5-4. And then 5-5. 2 games from the most significant grass court title of her career. And suddenly the score looked exactly the way every previous match against a Czech player had eventually looked. Uncertain. Tilted. Dangerous. The crowd held its breath. And the number 13, that shadow, that specific haunting pattern, sat above the court again. Not a number anymore. A question mark. What happened next? What happened in those final 2 games is going to sound simple if I just read you the score. She won them. 7-5. Final scoreline, 5-7, 6-3, 7-5. 2 hours and 37 minutes. But the score does not tell you what it felt like inside that stadium when the last point landed. It does not tell you about the sound. Not the polite, measured tennis applause you expect from a club venue on a Saturday afternoon. Something rawer than that. Something louder and more emotional and more human than polite applause has any right to be. It does not tell you about the way she dropped to the grass and covered her face with both hands, like she needed just one private moment to process something she had been chasing for a very long time. Like the weight of 13 losses leaving her body all at once was something she needed to feel quietly before she could look up and let the world see her face. The Czech curse. 13 matches. 2 full years of that specific, brutal pattern. Gone. Finished. Done. On a grass court in Birmingham, England, in front of hundreds of Filipinos who had traveled from every corner of the United Kingdom to be inside that moment. The fans. The part tennis coverage always misses. Let's talk about those fans for a moment. Because this is the piece of the story that most tennis writing completely walks past. Edgbaston Priory Club is not Wimbledon. It is not a 40,000-seat cathedral. It is a historic, intimate grass court club, beautiful in the quiet, old English way, surrounded by architecture that feels like it belongs to a different century. The courts are close. The atmosphere is personal. It is not a venue built for spectacle. On this Saturday, it was filled with Philippine flags. People drove hours, took trains across the country, saved vacation days from jobs they couldn't easily leave, brought their children to their very first live tennis match. OFWs who had been following her career from across oceans, who had watched every match on their phones at midnight and in airport lounges and on lunch breaks, suddenly had the chance to be in the same room as the moment they'd been watching through screens. And after her very first match of the week, during her on-court interview, she looked out at the crowd mid-sentence, and stopped. She stopped talking because she was genuinely surprised. Genuinely caught off guard. In Birmingham, England, of all places. She switched to Filipino, looked out at the stands, and said, "Thank you for the support. I didn't expect this many Filipinos to be here." She didn't expect it. That one sentence tells you more about what she has actually built than any ranking number ever will. Because rankings are data. They are points accumulated on a spreadsheet. But what walked into that tennis club on tournament week was something that cannot be quantified. A connection between an athlete and a nation, constructed not through branding campaigns or marketing strategy, but through match after match after match. Through a 5-2 deficit she refused to accept. Through third sets she decided weren't over. Through every press conference where she spoke to her supporters like they were in the room with her, because to her, they always are. That connection is real. It is growing. And it crossed an ocean, literally crossed an ocean, to stand in a grass court club in England and scream when she dropped to the ground and covered her face with her hands. You cannot manufacture that. You cannot buy it. It either exists or it doesn't. It exists. The chess move, why Birmingham was always about more than Birmingham. Now here is where the story expands. And this is the part that changes everything if you are watching Alex Eala's career with any level of seriousness. Birmingham was not just a tournament. It was a chess move. She entered the week ranked 37th in the world. The title moves her upward. And here is why the timing of that movement feels almost architectural in its precision. The cutoff date for Wimbledon seedings is June 22nd. 2 weeks away. Wimbledon does not use the standard WTA ranking for its seedings. It uses a modified system, one that weights grass court results more heavily. Which means a player who has been winning on this specific surface can be positioned significantly higher than their world ranking alone would suggest. And here is the detail that reshapes the entire mathematical picture. Hailey Baptiste, currently ranked above Eala, is hospitalized. She is unavailable. The path into the top 32 of the Wimbledon seedings list, the threshold that changes everything, is narrower than it appears. Eala is 2 main draw wins from almost certainly landing inside that line. 2 wins. Between now and the cutoff. At Queen's in London. Potentially in Berlin. 2 wins, and she walks into the All England club with a seed beside her name for the first time in her career. Why does that matter? Because last year, Alex Eala walked into Wimbledon without a seeding. And in the very first round, the draw handed her the defending champion. Her tournament ended before it had a chance to begin. 1 match. Wrong draw. Over. A seeding rewrites that entirely. With a seed, she does not face another seeded player until the 3rd round. 3 matches against unseeded opponents before the tournament truly tests her. 3 matches to build rhythm on grass. 3 matches to calibrate the footwork, the timing, the reading of the surface that grass demands more than any other. 3 matches of runway before the altitude gets serious. On a surface as specific and unforgiving as grass, 3 matches of runway is not a small advantage. It can be the difference between a second-week run and another early exit that gets filed under didn't quite happen. She is 2 wins away from that runway. Queen's Club, Tuesday. And why the opponent matters, which brings us to Tuesday. Queen's Club. London. First round opponent, Shuai of China. Let me give you the full picture here, because the surface details matter. She is 37 years old, 16 years older than Eala, and she is one of the most quietly respected competitors on the circuit. A career defined by exceptional doubles results, a baseline game that refuses to be hurried, and the kind of fight until the absolute last point mentality that has earned her genuine admiration across the tour for over a decade. She did not receive a wild card into this draw. She earned her way through qualifying. First, she defeated Hannah Klugman, one of Britain's most promising young talents. Then, in 3 sets, she took down Heather Watson, a crowd favorite and genuine grass court specialist on her home surface. Shuai Zhang is match sharp. She is not here to participate. She is not going to be overawed by who she's facing or what's at stake. But here is what the numbers say, clearly. She is ranked in the mid-60s. And Alex Eala, playing anything resembling the level she showed across 5 matches in Birmingham. The clean serving, the aggressive baseline game, the ability to elevate when cornered, the mental composure she demonstrated 5 separate times in a single tournament. That player against a mid-60s qualifier is a match the math says she wins. The question isn't the matchup. The question is whether she carries Birmingham into Tuesday. Whether the form and the fire and the belief that came with breaking a 2-year curse travels intact across the days between tournaments. Or whether the gap lets it cool. Tuesday. Noon UK time. 7 in the evening in the Philippines. Mark it. The biggest stage. What Wimbledon actually means let's end here. On the stage that makes everything else feel like prologue. Because Birmingham answered a question everyone was asking. But Wimbledon is the question that changes everything. This is the grass court major. The oldest tournament in tennis. The place where the language around a player shifts. Where a run doesn't just move a ranking but rewrites the entire conversation about who someone is, what they're made of, and what they're capable of becoming. Where legacies begin. Where careers get their proper names. Alex Eala's game was built for this surface. The left-handed serve that kicks wide at angles a right-hander simply cannot generate. The aggressive ground strokes that use incoming pace as a weapon rather than fighting against it. The ability to redirect at angles that open courts faster than opponents can close them. She is not a clay court grinder who has found herself on grass by circumstance. She is a grass court player, and right now, in June of 2026, she carries more grass court form and more genuine momentum than she has ever had in her career. She is 21 years old. She just broke a curse that had followed her across 2 full years and 13 consecutive matches. In a final, in a 3rd set, when the score was 5-5 and the entire thing was right there on the edge, ready to collapse the way it always had before. She has hundreds of supporters who cross borders and oceans to stand in a tennis club in Birmingham, England, and chant her name in Filipino. And she is 2 wins away from walking into the All-England club with a seed beside her name. Last year, she walked in as a first-round storyline. An interesting name. A player with potential that hadn't fully arrived yet. This year, if the next 8 days go the way Birmingham suggested they can, she walks in as a genuine contender. Not a dark horse. Not a feel-good narrative. A seeded player with grass court form, demonstrable mental composure under pressure, and an entire nation watching every single point. That is what Birmingham built. That is what the Czech curse finally losing, finally, after 13 matches, finally, actually meant. And that is why the next 3 weeks of Alex Eala's career are not just worth watching. They are the kind of thing you will want to tell people you watched in real time. The kind of moments that, when you look back years from now, you'll be glad you didn't miss. She dropped to the grass in Birmingham and covered her face with her hands. And when she looked up, the flags were waving, the crowd was screaming, and the trophy was waiting. Queen's is next. Then Wimbledon. Then whatever comes after that. Laban. Alex.